Welcome back. For more than a year now, soldiers and civilians have been dying in Ukraine. People from all walks of life and all around the world have been moved and motivated to get involved, offering any help they can. My next guests set up a charity to swiftly provide medical aid, particularly ambulances and other emergency vehicles. Justin Hughes, an ex-RAF and biotech CEO, and Oleksiy Podopryhora, I hope I pronounced that adequately, founder of Hospitallers Ukraine Aid, join me now. Welcome both.
Welcome.
Tell me about the charity Hospitallers and what it does.
Charity Hospitals, it's volunteers, civil people from all walks of life in Ukraine who have joined together to provide medical assistance on the front lines in Ukraine. At the moment, we have over 600 volunteers who operate across the whole front line, starting from the north, east, and south.
In the midst of a war situation, with so much happening, so many moving parts and so much help need, how did you go about pinpointing what help it was you felt was required and that you might be in a position to help provide?
I mean, when the war started, like myself, because I'm Ukrainian originally, but I live in the UK for I have lived in the UK for quite a long time. When the war started, I was in complete shock, like many other people, and I started to think, how can I best help and support my country? And we started to look for supporting various organizations. And I did a little bit of research on Ukraine, and then I came across this group of volunteer paramedics. It's civil people of civil professions, any profession you can think of, different ages, different backgrounds, who came together to undergo very, very short first aid training so they can go on the front lines and start saving lives of people, civilians, soldiers, you name it. And then the main challenge for those people was funding, because those people are not part of the government, they're not part of the army. They're just like you and me and Justin coming together, jumping in the car and driving away. And they had a lot of challenge in finding money, but not only money, finding aid equipment, medical equipment, and cars in particular. And this is why I thought, okay, instead of like trying to help, I'll just start focusing on the particular task.
Justin, how did you two know each other? How did you come to be together in this endeavour?
So we were at business school together quite a long time ago now. And I hadn't spoken to Alex for quite a while. And after all this started, I rang him up to check in with him and just sort of say, how's your family? Is there anything I can do? What's going on? And he was telling me, he'd already started to send these ambulances and vehicles. And I said, can I do anything? And he said, well, we're okay and we've got drivers and that. And then he sort of randomly said, the only real problem we have is the ambulances, because you need to have a C1 on your licence. So while I'm talking to him on the phone, I sort of got my wallet out. I'm looking at my licence. I'm like, well, I've got a C1. And he's like, yeah, that's because you're British and you're really old. And, they used to give that away for free in the driving test. And he said, well, I said, well, can I help you? And he said, well, would you like to drive in ambulance? He said, we could go either tomorrow or Friday.
Wow.
And I was sort of like, yeah, I probably should just speak to my wife first. But she was hugely supportive. And so we did it.
So you went from your life to driving an ambulance in a war zone?
No, because the idea was to drive it to Ukraine. And literally just drop it off just over the wall. And Alex had done, lots of these convoys. It was the first time for me.
Get it into the country.
Yeah, as it turned out, we dropped them off in Poland, and we got this message about meeting these guys in this sort of random car park outside Warsaw. And it's funny, we pitched up there, and this group of guys looked like a bunch of heavies, to be honest. And I was like, this could be interesting. And I opened the door, and the guy comes out and gives me a big hug and said, thank you for bringing the kit. And I said to him, are you Polish? We're in Poland. And he said, no, I'm Ukrainian, but I have to live here now. And he pulled up his trouser leg. And up to then, all friends were like, oh my God, you've done this amazing thing. The reality is, for me, it was kind of just a road trip across Europe. It wasn't dangerous. It wasn't that big a deal. It was almost a bit of an adventure. But then he pulled up his trouser leg and he had a prosthetic limb. And he's like, I got blown up. And it was that moment of realisation. And then one thing led to another. And, in order to sort of provide longevity. Alex was talking about the charity at that point. And I didn't really say it to him. But I was a bit like, this is already swinging the way of Ukraine. I was like, we're not going to need this. It's not going to last long enough. but it has. And so over time, we set up the charity.
And how many vehicles and the rest have you been able to provide there?
I mean, over 80.
It is 80.
Over 80.
Yeah. Can you tell me, Alex, what's it like for the people on the ground, the hospitallers who are actually there doing it? What kind of stories do they have to tell about what they're seeing and what's happening to them?
I mean, this is quite moving in their stories because, like as I said to you just a year ago, all of them were ordinary people, and majority none of them knew anything about, providing first aid as such. And then they had to undergo all this transformation within like 2 weeks, because like what happened was that they were sent for the very short training, 2-3 weeks, and after 3 weeks, you are on the front lines saving human lives, and then you can be like a 19, 20 years girl, who was just a student yesterday, and it's very, very sad stories very often because we do lose people because enemy targeting medical people a lot, and we have some tragic accidents as well because, for example, there are certain areas, and you've been talking about Bakhmut today, Avdiivka on the news. We have crews operating in those areas, and there are certain areas where you cannot evacuate an injured person during the daylight. You need to wait for the situation to get dark, and then when you evacuate person in the night, you can't put your lights on, so you have to drive your vehicle without lights, because if you drive your vehicle with the lights, you're an easy target. And we had unfortunate collisions where you would hit the tank because the tank would be crossing the road and so on. It's really.
Justin, how do you feel? Your life has been significantly altered by this, by re-establishing connection with Alex. What's the?
You just feel that. I mean, the actual practical commitment for me, it doesn't ask much of me in terms of time or anything, and it's just that.
But a door has opened into another.
Yeah, you just feel that there's a small opportunity to do something here that I'm just a tiny part of in a much bigger picture, but to actually help to make a little bit of a difference and do something meaningful in a positive way. It's like when this first all started, and people were, opening the doors for people to come and live with them and all. And obviously, we were just talking about before, all these things get normalised. And people, they lose that urgency, and so you talk to Alex and his friends and family and people in Ukraine. They all think it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. And I guess the thing for us is we're able to deliver aid to the point of need directly, very quickly, in a very agile way, with no sort of central management or overhead or anything. So if we can carry on doing that, and it's almost like the Bob Geldof moment, we need to keep the money coming in.
What can people who are watching this, people who want to get involved, how can they help, practically or financially?
Because we have put together some website, hospitalers.org.uk, and there is information on that website. So some people bring donations in. So we have a collection point in London where we collect medical supplies, because we are looking after paramedics. We are focusing on the medical aid mostly. At the moment, our necessities are armored vehicles, because things are getting really, really bad. The fighting is really, really getting to the very, very next terrible stage. We used to use ordinary pickup cars to collect. Just to give you a little bit of background, how the evacuation takes place. So we have a pickup cars which drive to the front line, collect injured person, and drive away maybe 10-15 miles maximum, where the bigger ambulance is waiting. So we move injured person to the bigger ambulances, and depending on the condition, we may need to stabilize this person. If it's okay to drive this person further, we drive this person further to the field hospital. And then from the East Field Hospital, we have a special bus, medical bus, which can take up to the 6 very, very heavy injured people inland to the proper hospital. So it's a 3-stage process, and at the moment, our pickup cars, are not able to get through to the certain areas of the front line for 2 reasons. Because first of all, easy target, a lot of mines in Avdiivka area, in Uliedar, or in Bakhmut. The amount of shelling, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. It's much, much worse to what we had in the beginning of the war. And we always risk, our paramedics, civilian people risk their lives. And our main priority now, getting armored cars at least we can protect them from being hit by mines or shelling.
You make it frighteningly real.
It's real.
You make it frighteningly real with your testimony. Oleksiy Podopryhora, Justin Hughes, wish you all the very best of luck with what you're doing. So important. Thank you for joining me this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.